Hello guys, I'm Dr. Poonam Agrawal here. I'll be teaching you vitamin K today. Vitamin K is a fat soluble vitamin. Other fat soluble vitamin are vitamin A, D and E. So we have altogether 4 vitamins which are fat soluble. They are vitamin A, D, E and K. So today I'll be talking to you regarding important aspect of vitamin K. We have 3 vitamin Ks, vitamin K1, vitamin K2 and vitamin K3. K1 is called phylloquinone, which is plant derived vitamin, and K2 is called menaquinone, which is derived from GIT bacteria, and the third one K3 is the synthetic one. This is called menadione. This is water soluble, and this is synthetic one. This is water soluble, and this one is most potent also. Most potent. The least potent is GIT bacteria, vitamin K, which is vitamin K2. So the least potent vitamin K is the vitamin K2. But most potent vitamin K is vitamin K3, which is called menadione, which is water soluble as well. Why vitamin K is termed as vitamin K? The reason is this terminology, the K terminology is derived from coagulation. This is a German word. We spell coagulation in this fashion. So from this, the K word is taken because vitamin K play a very instrumental role in coagulation process. So that is why it is said to be vitamin K. And this vitamin K, whether it is K1, K2 or K3, you should know structurally they are naphthoquinone derivative. They are naphthoquinone derivative, which has got 2 cyclical structure which are attached to each other with the isoprenoid tail. Isoprenoid tail is there. So structurally, if you see, the vitamin K is naphthoquinone derivative with the isoprenoid tail attached to it. The size of the tail differs in K1, K2 and K3. Now vitamin K is very, very important for post-translational modification of certain proteins, and those proteins are clotting factor number 2, 7, 9 and 10. You remember these numbers. These are clotting factors. Factor 2, which is prothrombin, factor 7, factor 9 and factor 10. 2, 7, 9, 10. These are clotting factors which are getting post-translationally modified in a vitamin K dependent manner. In addition to these proteins, we have protein C, protein S and protein Z, which are also getting modified in a vitamin K dependent manner. And we also have certain bone proteins like osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein. So these are the list of important proteins which are undergoing post-translational modification, where we have gamma carboxylation of glutamic acid residue of these proteins towards N-terminal. So the glutamic acid residues which are found near the N-terminal, they undergo gamma carboxylation in a vitamin K dependent manner. And this gamma carboxylation of glutamic acid in these protein imparts negativity to these proteins. So that is how the clotting factors 2, 7, 9, 10, when they become more electronegative, they tend to attract more of the calcium ion, which helps in the clotting process. Similarly, bone protein, when they undergo this kind of gamma carboxylation, they tend to get a lot of negativity with them, lot of negative charge with them, which attracts the calcium and magnesium and helps in bone mineralization. bone mineralization. So vitamin K helps in bone mineralization. Also, you should know it is not only vitamin D which is important for bone mineralization, even vitamin K play important role in bone mineralization process. So it all is based on the electronegativity which is imparted on the glutamic acid residue due to gamma carboxylation of those amino acids that imparts the electronegativity, and because of that electronegativity, the cations, they tend to get attracted to these proteins and help in their physiological functioning. In this context, one thing is very important that you should know: the vitamin K cycle, how it takes place. Because this kind of carboxylation is possible only if the vitamin K cycle, which otherwise is called epoxide cycle, vitamin K cycle, or otherwise called epoxide cycle, occurs uninterruptedly. So what is this vitamin K cycle or epoxide cycle? This is a cycle which occurs in the liver, and there we talk about 3 different forms of vitamin K which interconverts. They are vitamin K hydroquinone, then we have vitamin K epoxide, then we have vitamin K quinone. So these are 3 different forms of vitamin K which are interconverted in this vitamin K cycle. My request is, don't get confused with these 3 different forms of vitamin K with the terminology K1, K2 and K3. Whether it is K1 or K2 or K3, they undergo this kind of conversion in vitamin K cycle, right? So K1, K2, K3, they are 3 different subtypes of vitamin K, I should say, and these with different forms of vitamin K which I have written in this picture are different reductive states of the one particular set of vitamin K. So we have vitamin K hydroquinone, epoxide, and the quinone. In this fashion, you have to understand this. The enzyme which is converting hydroquinone to epoxide is the important enzyme which is called epoxidase. And the enzyme which is converting epoxide to quinone is called epoxide reductase. The enzyme which is converting quinone to hydroquinone form is again one reductase which is called quinone reductase. This quinone reductase directly needs NADPH hydrogen, and this epoxide reductase needs reduced lipoic acid which is oxidized. This oxidized lipoic acid in turn demands the NADPH for reduction. That's a different thing altogether. What is important in this vitamin K cycle is the action of epoxidase. This is most important enzyme of vitamin K cycle. Once upon a time in EAMS, they asked you in vitamin K cycle which of the following enzyme is most important functionally. So it is epoxidase activity which is very, very crucial in this vitamin K cycle. Because as a byproduct of this epoxidase activity, you should see the glutamic acid of these proteins which I have enumerated here, they undergo negativity. You please try to understand glutamic acid. When I'm talking to you, you are understanding that this glutamic acid is having, this is alpha carbon, this is beta carbon, this is gamma carbon. On the gamma carbon, one carboxyl group is already there in the glutamic acid, right? This gamma carbon, it undergoes conversion in this epoxidase activity, where this gamma carbon gets electronegativity, and this glutamic acid which is getting carb anion over here, this is called carb anion, this negativity of carbon, gamma carbon of the glutamic acid is the reason that carbon dioxide is attached here, and that negativity is being transferred to that carbon dioxide, so as to see you get to have one carboxyl group here at this gamma carbon, it becomes doubly carboxylated. Glutamic acid already is having one carboxyl group, but now because of this epoxidase activity due to anion carbon, this gamma carbon undergoes carboxylation, and that negativity is transferred to this carbon dioxide, converting this gamma carbon to doubly carboxylated carbon. This kind of modification of the glutamic acid in these certain proteins, you see, starts imparting the negativity to proteins which tend to attract minerals like calcium and magnesium as far as bone protein is concerned. So this is vitamin K cycle, and there are 3 different forms of vitamin K are interconverted. The most important enzyme I have told you, which is very much needed in the intact form, is the epoxidase in this vitamin K or epoxide cycle. When warfarin is given or dicumarol is given, these 2 enzymes are inhibited: warfarin poisoning or dicumarol poisoning. These 2 enzymes are inhibited. This results in anticoagulation. In warfarin toxicity, the antidote is given. In warfarin toxicity, what will happen? Warfarin toxicity, lot of bleeding will be there, because vitamin K is not there in this hydroquinone form, and this epoxidase activity is not seen. So lot of bleeding will be there. So in warfarin toxicity, the antidote is given, and the antidote is vitamin K hydroquinone. This is given. So this is the best antidote for warfarin poisoning. There is no use of giving vitamin K epoxide or vitamin K quinone, because most of the time the quinone reductase is also inhibited. So there's no use of giving vitamin K epoxide or vitamin K quinone as an antidote for warfarin poisoning. The best antidote is vitamin K hydroquinone. So when this is given, the epoxidase activity is taking place, which is converting it to vitamin K epoxide, and then this side action, this byproduct of glutamic acid is produced, and that is leading to coagulation by clotting factors. This vitamin K deficiency is rare. The source is green leafy vegetable and GIT bacteria. Generally, in a normal health, whatever GIT bacteria is producing is more than enough, for biological activity. So deficiency is very, very rare in normal healthy adult. But we find the deficiency in preterm infant, preterm babies, because generally fetus gets vitamin K from mother via placenta. One thing you should know, that vitamin K crosses placenta. So as soon as the placenta is cut, the supply of vitamin K from the mother is interrupted. And fetus is not storing enough vitamin K. Liver is not storing enough vitamin K. And breast milk is a poor source of vitamin K. So preterm infant, they tend to develop vitamin K deficiency. It results in hemorrhagic disease of the newborn. So that is why the injection of Menadione, vitamin K3, is given 1 mg immediately on birth to avoid such complications. In children and adult, as I told you, the deficiency is rare because the gut is producing adequate amount of vitamin K. The deficiency in children and adult is seen in malabsorption, in fat malabsorption. Because it's a fat soluble vitamin, it needs proper chylomicron formation for its absorption. So if there is any interruption in chylomicron formation and absorption, it will result in vitamin K deficiency. This is seen in obstructive jaundice, fat malabsorption, obstructive jaundice, when the bile is not reaching the GIT lumen, the chylomicron is not well formed. In case of chronic pancreatitis, also when the digestion is affected, then malabsorption syndrome like SPRU. Also, vitamin K deficiency is seen. Then the patient on long-term antibiotic, which tend to kill the GIT bacteria, they tend to develop vitamin K deficiency. The manifestation in adult is bleeding diathesis, ecchymosis, bleeding, bruising, ecchymosis, bruising, and prolonged prothrombin time. Prothrombin time is prolonged. Supplementation is vitamin K. Injection can be given orally also if the absorption is normal. Daily requirement of vitamin K is very less. RDA, recommended daily allowance, is only 50 to 100 microgram per day. It is in microgram, which is a very small amount. So these all points regarding vitamin K, you should know that why vitamin K is called vitamin K, because I have told you it's a coagulant vitamin and it's a naphthoquinone derivative with the isoprenoid tail. We have K1, K2 and K3, phylloquinone, menaquinone and menadione. Phylloquinone is plant derived. K2 is the GIT bacteria derived vitamin K and K3 is the synthetic one. And preterm infant, they tend to develop the deficiency of vitamin K. So to avoid that, as soon as they are born, the injection is given of vitamin K. And there are many proteins, in addition to factor 2, 7, 9, 10, there are many other proteins which are undergoing post-translational gamma carboxylation in a vitamin K dependent manner, for which uninterrupted vitamin K cycle is needed. And in warfarin poisoning or in dicumarol excess dose, there is bleeding. And for antidote, vitamin K is given. But which form of vitamin K is given? Vitamin K hydroquinone is given, because we need to have a epoxidase activity which can produce carbanion glutamic acid. So this is all about vitamin K, which I wanted to discuss with you today. Thank you very much.